Welcome back to the channel. Join us as we take part in the World Series of Fitness Racing at Hyrox Anaheim. Hyrox hosts events all over the country, and this December they were hosting one in Anaheim, California, which is only about a 7-hour drive from Phoenix. We arrived pretty early the day before our race and decided to do early check-in, which was hosted from 4 to 7 p.m. on Friday. This wall that you see actually had every single race participant's name printed on it, so don't pass it by, find your name. It's a pretty cool photo opportunity. The check-in process itself was pretty easy. You had a QR code that had been emailed to you when you registered. You just had to go in, let them scan that, and then they would write your kind of bib number on your arm, which also indicated your start time. There was a little bit of confusion where the night before we had received an email telling us our start time had changed, but then when they wrote the start time on our arm, it was the original start time. The official start time is whatever they write on your arm, so make sure you always go by that. Okay, at this point, some of you are probably asking, what is Hyrox? Hyrox is a fitness race that consists of 8 1,000-meter runs separated by different workout stations. Those stations include a 1,000-meter ski, a 50-meter sled push, a 50-meter sled pull, 80 meters of burpee broad jumps, 1,000 meters of rowing, 200 meters of farmer carries, 100 meters of lunges, and finally finishing with 100 wall balls. You complete all of this work in a circuit type fashion, starting with a 1,000-meter run, moving into station one, and so on and so forth until you complete all of the work. Now, the entire event is indoors, and you're running on this track that kind of goes around the convention center. So every venue is going to be slightly different in terms of how many laps you have to run. And even within a race, for example, our race, the first time we went out for a run, we actually did about 3.5 laps. Whereas every other time we went out for a run, it was only about 2.5 laps. But they go over all of that with you in the start area, and kind of the key that they gave us was to count the in sign. So on the fourth time on the first lap, we would come in, and on the third time, we saw the in sign. On every other run, we would come in. The event had a small recovery area for athletes for after you finish. This was a little strange though, because it was very small, and when you got there, they would hand you a water and a non-alcoholic beer, which was kind of a weird combination for a fitness event. So the way Hyrox works is there's heats of athletes starting every 10 minutes, beginning at, for our event, 7:50 a.m. I was in the second heat of individual non-pro men, which started at 8 a.m., but Robyn didn't go till the afternoon at 2:20 p.m., so we had quite a gap in between. Here you can see I've hit the warm-up area. They had a whole bunch of machines and stuff ready to help you get prepped and ready for your race, and then off to the start area. Going into the race, I'd been dealing with a little bit of a hip issue, particularly when running, so I wasn't sure what to expect, but I actually felt pretty good on the opening run. Robyn was only able to capture video of me on the first run, but in general, as long as I kept kind of just an average pace, usually finishing 1,000 meters in around 5.5, 6.5 minutes, I was able to keep it under control. Being 6'3", skiing is a pretty good movement for me. So my goal was just to hold roughly a 2-minute pace and not blow up too early. Sleds were actually the movements I was most concerned about going into this because I couldn't really train them in our gym because of the flooring differences. I played with them in the warm-up area and they felt really good, but on the floor, they were actually much harder. It's a thinner carpet that's a little tackier and stickier, and it's more difficult to move the sleds. I've seen some people suggest that the best strategy is to only try to push the sled about halfway, take a break, and then do the second half. I obviously didn't do that. I went unbroken for most of the ways except for this last one where I took a small break. It may have been a better idea to break it up, but overall, I'm reasonably happy with how I did. Now, in training, sled pulls are actually significantly better for me than sled pushes, but for some reason on this day, this thing felt like a million pounds. I did reasonably well in my terms of my placement, but I felt like I was pulling this thing forever and it was barely moving. Okay, so everyone wants to ask what the hardest part of Hyrox was. For me, without question, it was the 80 meters of burpee broad jumps. These felt like they took forever. I felt like I was barely moving. I had a volunteer judge come up who started trying to get me to go faster and jump two squares at a time, which took so much more energy and just spiked my heart rate through the roof. I felt like I moved pretty well throughout most of High Rocks, but when I finished this station, I literally came to a dead stop in the rock zone for probably 20 or 30 seconds, just trying to catch my breath. I definitely will train a lot more on burpee broad jumps before I do another one. Mercifully, the next station was the 1,000-meter row. Again, being 6'3", this is a good movement for me. I again wanted to hover around that 2-minute pace, which I did. The time you see here again includes the time to enter and exit the rock zone. But this was a great chance for me to kind of recover, get my heart rate back under control, and get ready for the next station. Now, the next station's the Farmer's Carry, and this one was kind of interesting. I thought this was going to be my best finish. It was by far the easiest station. I did the entire 200 meters unbroken without setting the kettlebells down. But then when I saw my score, it was actually my worst placement. And it seems that the reason for that is a lot of people actually run with the kettlebells, where I just walked at a brisk pace with them. So if I do it again, I'll definitely need to figure out how to do a light jog with these. Next up was the unbroken sandbag lunges. You cannot put the bag down here. You will get disqualified. So you just have to go slow and steady. At this point, though, your legs are burning, you're fatigued. I'm not great at lunges anyways. My knees really don't like them. So it was just keep your head down and move through. Last but not least is the 100 wall balls. These are normally a really good movement for me. Again, being tall, I have an advantage, but I was so fatigued and my legs were burning so much that I actually got no rep on the first few because I couldn't even hit the target properly. I was able to recompose myself and then do a big set of 35 to start and then chip away in sets of 15 to 20 after that, but it was definitely harder than I expected at this point. Unfortunately, Robyn didn't catch me going across the finish line because her phone ran out of storage. But overall, this was an amazing event, and crossing that finish line, getting your photo taken, and seeing the big video board's a really cool moment. In the end, I was a little bit slower than I would have liked. My target was an hour and 15, and I finished in an hour and 28, but my running was compromised a little bit, so I can't complain. After my race, we went back to the hotel, got some food, relaxed for a little bit, and then it was time to head back for Robyn's race. We had a little time to kill, so we decided to check out Hyrox World, which is the shop set up in the middle of the arena. Here you can buy all the different Puma gear. They're the official sponsor of Hyrox. You can buy the Deviate Nitro shoes and different tank tops and t-shirts and stuff. Some of it's customized for the specific location of your event. So in this case, you see the Hyrox ANA for Anaheim. We did pick up a couple tank tops, but not too much. You also have a chance here to check out some of the Center gear. Center is the official equipment provider of Hyrox, so all the different weights and kettlebells and sleds and all that stuff is made by them, and you can check that out and purchase some of their stuff as well. After the obligatory pre-race selfie, it was time for Robyn's heat to start. Somehow she still manages to be adorable and bubbly while working out. At 5'3", skiing is definitely a more challenging movement for Robyn. She did an outstanding job on this though, finishing in 5 minutes and 12 seconds. Again, just keeping a smooth, steady pace to start. Now, where I struggled on this movement, Robyn absolutely demolished the sled push, taking 64th place overall. Well, just like me, Robin agreed that the sled pull was way harder than we expected. I don't know if it was the carpet or what. The weight didn't seem particularly heavy, but it was really hard to move. We both tried different strategies, either pulling just hand over hand. We would also try grabbing and kind of walking back within the box you're allowed to move in, but neither one seems to be particularly better or more efficient. One interesting difference between the men and the women's competition is I didn't find any point in the men's competition where I got stacked up with other athletes. But on the burpee broad jump here, Robin ended up in a big crowd of athletes and was actually being slowed down a little by the people ahead of her. Now, that meant that these weren't nearly as taxing for her because she was kind of getting some built-in rest. But if you're trying to go for your fastest time, this can be a little frustrating. Similar to the ski, the row's more challenging for Robyn. She strapped in and said the first 500 meters felt pretty good, but the second 500 was a bit more of a struggle. By the end, she was going out into the run a little bit more fatigued than she would have liked. Like me, Robyn was intending to go unbroken on the farmer's carry, but walking, not running. The problem was her hands were really getting sweaty and slippery, and she was struggling to hang on to the kettlebells. She ended up having to set them down just briefly right before crossing the finish line, but that cost her some spots in terms of placement. Despite being the shorter athlete, Robyn actually did better than me on the lunges. She was able to start pretty quick and then maintain a fairly smooth and steady pace throughout. Wall balls are always a struggle for Robin. Again, this is a movement that favors taller athletes as opposed to shorter athletes, but she was able to chip away in small sets, usually doing about 10 with a quick rest in between. Robin ended up finishing in 1 hour and 38 minutes, which I am extremely proud of her for. She didn't think she could beat 2 hours. I told her from the very beginning she would, and she absolutely crushed it. Well, that's a wrap for Hyrox Anaheim 2024. Overall, we had an absolute blast and both agree it's something we'd like to do again. We've already started looking at races in 2025 to see if there's any of them that fit into our schedule. Highly recommend everyone give this a shot. And if you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. We have a lot of exciting adventures coming in 2025. See you then.